And we're so glad that everyone is here this afternoon. Let me ask you a question. I want you to raise your hand for just a minute and tell me, after I ask the question, tell me how many of you know a person who claims to be an atheist? Just raise your hand up real high. Raise it up real high.
This is a video response to Kevin Cauley's How Atheism Destroys Humanity. This is a sermon that he gave to his church in Mississippi, and in order to spare you a long drawn-out video, for the sake of brevity, I'm just going to leave a link in the description box for those who want the absolute pure context of what he was saying. I'm just going to respond to a few clips from it. And we're going to start by skipping over a couple minutes in the beginning of his video where he's talking about how his eldest son had a friend named George who became suicidal after outing himself as being an atheist in around the senior year of high school. So we join this video a couple minutes in. Here we go.
This young man, George, who was a professed atheist, decided that, life just wasn't worth living anymore, and he thought that ending it would be best because, after all, if you end your life, if you're an atheist, you don't believe there's anything else, it all goes away. All your problems, all your suffering, all your pain, it's all over. And so he thought that was the solution. Well, I did get in touch with the counselor, and she did intervene. And we did get the chance to talk to George, and George's parents were made aware of what was going on in his life, and they started to get more involved with him, and George is still alive today, I'm glad to say. But it was because of George's atheism that brought him to that point.
Kevin, knowing a lot of atheists myself, I can actually attest to there being something to what you're saying, in that many of the atheists that I know have had suicidal ideation at some point in their lives, and it seems to center around the period right after they deconverted. But where I'm going to disagree with you here is that atheism itself is the cause of the suicidal ideation and the depression. Because while, yeah, I've seen that, if you're going to deconvert, maybe you should just plan for 6 months of crying in your bed and gloom and doom and gray skies and all that. Yes. Like your dog died or something. Your God died. And it's not just that your whole perspective on everything changes. One of the things that you have to realize when you deconvert is that you're about to lose a lot of your friends, because all of the bigotry that you used to exclude other people, and treat them differently, you're about to receive that yourself. Once you tell your group of Christian friends that you are no longer a Christian, you have to expect that some of them are not going to want to be your friend anymore. They're going to think that you're demon-possessed. They're going to think that you're not getting into heaven. You're going to lead them into not getting into heaven. All sorts of stuff. So, my counter-argument to atheism causing suicidal thoughts is bigoted people treating you badly causes depression, and that depression can lead to wanting to kill yourself. In fact, there are many other minority groups that also experience a lot of bigotry and prejudice, and they just so happen to also experience higher rates of suicide and attempted suicide. So, yeah, maybe instead of blaming them for their beliefs, maybe you should look to yourself and how you've been treating these people and how the people around them treat them when they come across these beliefs.
You see, what we believe affects how we live our lives. And if we don't believe there's a God, and there's no heaven and hell, and we don't believe that anything is going to happen to us after we die, then that will change how we live our lives and affect what we do. Look at Psalm 10 and verse 4 in the American Standard Version. The wicked in the pride of his countenance saith, he will not require it. All his thoughts are, there is no God. Look at the Holman Christian Standard Version. In all his scheming, the wicked arrogantly thinks, there is no accountability, since God does not exist. Very interesting translation of this verse. And this is at the heart of how an atheist thinks.
Actually, this is more at the heart of where bigots get their justification. You look at those verses, and they both call the people that don't believe the way that you do wicked or evil. And yeah, I'll give you that not believing in a God or a heaven or hell will change your outlook and perspective and your decision making. Yes. But just because you don't believe in a God doesn't mean that you are evil or wicked. And I really like the two versions of the Bible that you quoted there, being, newer translations that seem to, you want to get with the times and point a finger more at the atheist movement that is around today than the original people that the other versions of the Bible previous to it would have been pointing at, which would be, wicked evildoers being, portrayed as not being, godly or following in God or seeking God, and that's why they're doing evil things. But not that they are atheists. It's these new translations that you have used that seem to say that. I welcome anyone to go look up Psalm 10:4 and then use a concordance Bible and see the difference between the King James Version and what was just presented there.
You can believe in zero, which is what a lot of atheists believe in. They say, well, I just don't believe anything. There's no meaning. There's no purpose in life. That's also known as the doctrine of nihilism.
Okay, Kevin, say it with me. Nihilism. Okay? Before you do a presentation like this, just look up the $10 words, and there's little pronunciation guides right after them in the dictionary. Also, most of the atheists that I know, they're not nihilists, and most of the nihilists that I know are Christians. How did that happen? Maybe it's that atheism and theism are a cross-section of humanity that can have other feelings like nihilism and whatnot. In fact, most of the philosophers that came up with nihilism and talked about it in the beginning of the Enlightenment, I think you'll find that they were not open atheists Although, retrospectively, some evangelical churches might deem them to be, heretical and atheistic because they don't believe in God the same way that they believe. But yeah, if all of my atheist friends were nihilistic, I think I'd just have a bunch of whatever friends were not nihilistic. Because that would be just a gloom and doom pity party every day, right?
However, if you're an atheist, you can't believe in nothing regarding human persons. And why is that? Because they're around us everywhere. Now think about that for a minute. I have to believe in something about my friend here. What? Dylan. I have to believe in something about my friends over here. I have to believe something about those in the back. You see, human persons are very upfront with us. They're there. They won't go away. They exist, right? What am I going to make of my friends and my neighbors if I'm an atheist?
Now, what you're saying sounds a lot like some of the apologetics that would say, well, every person knows in their heart that there is a God, and everyone believes something on faith, even those people who say that they have constructed a belief system where they shun faith and they only believe things that are proven to them. Even those people, they believe that you have to believe. And now you're saying, you're not saying those things. What you're saying is, because people are in front of you, you must believe in the people. Also, just like the previous segment, you need to research before you talk about certain things that are $10 words, because nihilism, when applied to metaphysics, would actually mean that you could discount everything in reality. Nothing really exists in reality, so that includes the people. If you're going to equate atheists with nihilism, they wouldn't have to acknowledge you or anyone in the crowd, just like you were playing with that crowd there. Yeah, it doesn't work in philosophy classes. Maybe in a church, or a place where people can't look stuff up really quickly. But yeah, what your explanation there just it doesn't work. No.
Atheism is destructive to humanity for 3 reasons. And I'm only going to have 3 points, unlike the previous speaker. He had 7 great points, but I'm only going to have 3 for you today. And the first one is that atheism teaches that humans are just animals. That's all you are.
No. Atheism does not teach people to go forth and now learn biology because you are an atheist. There's no dogma that tells you that you have to pick up a biology textbook just because you're an atheist. And strangely enough, many of the people who would go forth and get a degree in biology would be Christians and theists. And yeah, you don't have to believe anything about a god or gods in order to pick up a biology textbook and learn that humans are part of the animal kingdom. But you do have to be a certain type of evangelical Christian to want to deny science to the point where you want to remove humans from the animal kingdom and make them so special because there's some certain pieces of the Bible that you've picked out. And then, you're going to say that people who don't believe in God are destroying the world and humanity and all that. But to deny that we have parts of us that are animalistic and parts of us that are biological, that come with everything that being a primal animal comes with. It's you're going to say that we're destroying humanity. It makes sense that you would have the beliefs that would want to repress natural urges, because you don't think that we should have them. We should be above that. We can remove ourselves from that. And then where does that get you?
The doctrine that humans are just animals is played out in our popular culture. The band Nickelback has a song titled Animals, in which they say, regarding their various activities, boys with girls and otherwise.
Ah, yes, the authority of rock stars. Is there anything they don't know? Yeah, no. If we have to accept Nickelback on Team Atheism, then you have to accept Creed, okay? And then we'll just have a lose-lose, and we'll call it even. And then later we'll flip for Lady Gaga.
Oh, no one will deny that our bodies have some common features with animals. That's true. But the essence of what we are is something different. Completely different from what an animal is. Think about all the human characteristics that you have that are found nowhere in the animal world. Rationality, free will, moral agency, objectivity, self-reflection, deliberation, political society, tool fabrication, imagining multiple possibilities, that is, the ability to imagine multiple possibilities, and the ability to follow purposes to an end, to have a goal and to attain that goal. These are things that only humans can do. Animals cannot do these things. Oh, a chimpanzee may pick up a stick and stick it down inside of a termite mound and pull some termites out. Yeah, but that's not making a tool to do a specific job. You see, we're very different from animals in many different ways.
Actually, when the chimpanzees that Jane Goodall observed made those tools, they stripped the other sticks off of those branches, and they stripped the leaves, and they made the tool. That when they stripped they actually did, modify it. I'm going to give you that human beings have a much higher capacity for cognition than any other animal on the planet. I'm not going to give you that they're not animals, but some of those things that you said, scientists are working on showing examples of those things. Year after year, more of them come out. In your own church, I can see a little bit of a herd mentality. But, yeah, political stuff. Have you ever seen how a pack operates? Have you seen the show Meerkat Manor? Wow. So, when you want to say that animals don't make tools, you're saying they don't fabricate them. We know that they use them, right? But you want to move the goalpost a little bit farther and say they don't fabricate them. So, what I want to know is, do we have to not count anything that human beings have touched and made, and then the animals using those tools to make other tools, you know, because I'm guessing you've been to a circus where animals will use all sorts of stuff. But just if we're just going to go simple here, I'm wondering, have you ever seen a bird's nest? Because it's an extension of the presence of the bird when it's not there. You know, it does something for it. It holds its young. And it was a bunch of sticks, and then it was arranged, and sometimes there's all sorts of little stuff in there, like mud and string and grasses and all sorts. It makes the nest, you know. And I could talk about otters and smashing oysters on their belly, and, you know, you probably aren't going to count chimps or elephants painting because the paintbrush came from a human, but they could probably paint with a stick, you know, or a blade of grass if they were doing it out in the wild. But maybe you think that humans taught them how to do that. So I'm going to say all the baiting that goes on in the animal kingdom, alligators with sticks on their nose in order to catch birds. I know I've seen video of the coconut octopus, you know, using the coconut shell, like the two halves of it, and then putting it back together. But maybe you think that the humans shucked the shell. You know, coconuts don't always just split it in two like that. So, yeah, I'm wondering, have you had dogs that didn't have any toys from Petco? What happens is they start playing with things in the backyard, like sticks and whatever they can get, you know, sometimes dead animals, bugs, whatnot. But would you consider a toy to be a tool of entertainment? You know, animals do a lot of things that humans do. I believe it was Henry Rollins that said that animals don't naturally bodybuild or smoke in the wild. Those are two things that you'd have to teach them to do. But yeah, all of this is a result of our higher ability for cognition, and we do seem to have this knack for training animals to do things that their imaginations couldn't come up with, and then we get them to do all sorts of things, like take down burglars, you know, take alcohol to people who are up in the Alps, like in the cartoons, you know, like skiing with the St. Bernard thing. There's all sorts of examples of animals using tools, and I just think that this wasn't a well thought out example for you to add to your list of things. And I would say that just because we have a higher cognition than other animals doesn't mean that that separates us from them in a way that makes us not biological anymore, and makes us not come from the same line of heredity, that makes us not suffer from the same sorts of maladies. And my bigger problem is that you're saying, because you can find these differences between humans and other animals, even though we can find differences between other animals and other animals, because you can find these differences, then you can remove biology from any sort of informed decision that you're going to make on life matters, and you can just think about the world as being just spiritual, you know, and this is just a training mode before you get to heaven, you know. And I would say that that's the bigger removal of humanity in this back and forth that we're having. It seems to me that keeping your head in the clouds and thinking about God all the time is more of a humanity killer than realizing that you are part of the animal kingdom.
And it is because we are created in God's image. To say that humans are just animals relegates the status of a human to equality with all animals and destroys humanity's unique place in the world. And what happens when humans behave like animals? We destroy ourselves.
And what happens when humans behave like they're not animals and everything in the world was given to them in order to have dominion over it? We destroy ourselves and the planet because we think God's just going to replace everything and provide for us because we don't have to think about any answers that don't involve God magic.
Number two, atheism claims that humans have no absolute moral values. No absolute moral values. It's not that humans don't have morals. The atheists will claim to have some morals, but they're always relative.
Kevin, I am one of those people who believes that situational ethics can fit your situations in reality better than an absolute pre-prescribed morality would. But I think you're generalizing a bit, because while some atheists like Richard Dawkins, when presented with something like that, would say, well, yes, and what is the purpose of an absolute morality for keeping the Sabbath, or stoning people who are adulterers, or, whatnot. But there are other atheists who actually believe in an absolute morality based on science, and those would be the people who have read books by Sam Harris. So, there are also theists, people who believe in God, who believe in situational ethics over, any sort of absolute morality. Why you want to, I guess, pigeonhole atheists this way, it's like you think that the absence of God removes a certain type of morality from them. It's the age-old demonization of atheists to say that you take away God, you take away a source of goodness, and it's not the case. Not in the Christian or theist sense, not in the atheist sense. People come about their morality in all sorts of different ways.
Infamous serial murderer and cannibal Jeffrey Dahmer attributed his behavior to his belief that without God there was no ultimate accountability. He said this, quote, "If a person doesn't think that there is a God to be accountable to, then what's the point of trying to modify your behavior to keep it within acceptable ranges?" He was asked by reporter Stone Phillips, "Why did you do all these things?" And he said, "It was because I didn't believe there was a God to be ultimately accountable to. That's why I behaved the way I did."
Ah, the authority of serial killers. Is there anything that they don't know? Wow. So, you're saying Jeffrey Dahmer's admitting that he wouldn't have killed all those people, if he hadn't come to the conclusion that there is no God. How hard do you think it would be for me to find, say, a bunch of people who say that God told them to kill a bunch of people? The people who attribute their killings to not believing in God, do you think that they are any different than the people who would attribute their killings to God told them to do it? Do you think one of those is more frequent than the other? Do you think that maybe this is like one of the most extreme cherry pickings of all time?
Think about how this translates into our common culture. In Shakespeare's The Tempest, the character Prospero says this: "Our revels now are ended. These, our actors, as I foretold you, were all spirits and are all melted into the air, into thin air. And like the baseless fabric of this vision, the cloud-capped towers, the gorgeous palaces, the solemn temples, the great globe itself, yea, all which it inherit, shall dissolve. And like this insubstantial pageant, faded, leave not a rack behind. We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with sleep." What is he saying? He's saying this: look at your life. It's nothing more than something like a play. It has a beginning, it has an end, and then it's over, never to return again. Your life is like a dream. Have you ever had a dream and then you've woken up and then it just fades away? It's gone. You can't remember it anymore. That's what your life is. On the one end is oblivion, and on the other end is oblivion, and the middle is just a dream.
Kevin, I can't tell you how incredibly odd it is that you would throw William Shakespeare into the mix of examples of how atheism is infiltrating culture for the worse, because on the way to my major in English, yeah, I learned about Shakespeare, and it's kind of a given that you're going to have to read most all of his works, and in order to understand them, you need to understand the biblical references in them. You pretty much have to pick up a Bible and read it in order to understand his works, because in his time, people learned to read using the Bible, if they learned to read at all, and he was a Christian. In fact, he was a member of the Church of England. There's some people who say that maybe his family had Catholic roots, but he was buried in Stratford-upon-Avon, a church, where there's a special pew just for him, okay? Like, in the church. There are other churches that have things about him in stained glass windows and stuff. Just a little bit of a Google search, a little bit, would have told you that you are about to cite as an example of atheism messing up culture a Christian. This is so monumentally facepalm retarded. Like, wow. But I will say about that passage in The Tempest, famous ending. It's the one where it breaks the fourth wall and the audience is being talked to directly. That wasn't from the perspective of an atheist. That was from the perspective of a Christian, that when this life falls away, there's going to be an eternity later. Like, there's this segment that is your life, that it's just this short. And, you know, the rest of your life is beyond your death, just like this play is just a short segment of your life. Your life is just a short segment of spiritual life, and the whole universe and whatnot. But you say that you know that atheists believe that before you're born there was oblivion, and after you're born there's oblivion. Not a requirement of being an atheist to believe in oblivion, whatever that is. You can simply say, I don't know. I don't know is an acceptable answer. You know, it's okay to say, I don't know. You can't pigeonhole people into not being able to say, I don't know. You can't speak for them and say, well, this is what you believe. There's a big nothingness, a void at the end. No. If I don't know, that's okay. You know? I don't know, and I haven't seen anything convincing from you, and I don't think that you know as much as you think you know.
Viktor Frankl was a man who survived the German Holocaust, and I believe that he has the right to say a few things about that subject. He said this: if we present a man with a concept of man which is not true, we may well corrupt him. When we present man as an automaton of reflexes, as a mind machine, as a bundle of instincts, as a pawn of drives and reactions, as a mere product of instinct, heredity, and environment, we feed the nihilism to which modern man is, in any case, prone. I became acquainted with the last stage of that corruption in my second concentration camp, Auschwitz. The gas chambers of Auschwitz were the ultimate consequence of the theory that man is nothing but the product of heredity and environment, or, as the Nazi liked to say, of blood and soil. I am absolutely convinced that the gas chambers of Auschwitz, Treblinka, and Majdanek were ultimately prepared not in some ministry or other in Berlin, but rather at the desks and in the lecture halls of nihilistic scientists and philosophers. Atheism. Atheism destroys humanity.
Kevin, I'm very used to hearing people trying to equate atheism with past military enemies of the United States, such as communist Russia or Pol Pot or China, or, you know, even misattributing Hitler's actions to atheism when in fact he was raised Catholic. And there are many pictures of him in his Nazi military era with priests and cardinals and whatnot. And you can read his own works and see how fondly he thought of the church. But maybe you are just falling into the framing of what Nazism was that you were taught in public schools that were post-World War II, where they really wanted to separate their own religion from the actions of Hitler. So there was a lot of things that weren't taught in schools, but I understand, because I was ignorant on those facts myself for a while. Here's the problem. If I give you that Nietzsche was an atheist, which, you know, he did write God is Dead, but there was a larger context to that. There was more meaning. If I give you that he was an atheist and a nihilist, and that there was other philosophers that were nihilists, and their writings directly inspired Nazism and Hitler and all of his henchmen, right? If I give you that, if I lose this to you, you lose more. Let me explain. What if we held the Bible to the same standard that you're placing on the works of these nihilistic philosophers? Could we then attribute all of the killings that have ever been done in the name of God back to those apostles that wrote about Jesus? Could we not blame Christians for writing stuff and then inspiring inquisitions and crusades and holy wars and wow, all sorts of horrible killing all throughout history, not just in one little segment of history? Compare every holy war in history to just World War II and you lose. And I'm seeing not much changing about that either. The trend still across the globe is people fighting over whose God is bigger and better and more important, and fighting over little strips of land that they think their God gave to them. I don't see worldwide right now a lot of people fighting for there is no God, you know, and then taking up arms for that. I don't see it. Show me the atheist crusade. It's just, it's an odd thing. So yeah, if I don't argue that Hitler's rationale was separate from nihilism, and you have been basically indoctrinated into a belief system where America is separate in all of its culture, and America is the good Christian country, and anything that was against America wasn't really Christian. If I don't argue against that, then you lose more. Wow. Had to end with a note on Nazism, right? Well, in case you think that anything here was taken out of context, I welcome anybody to check out the original video in the link below in the description box. He does expound on some of the things that were shown in this video. It's a 33-minute video on his part, so go ahead and check it out, and probably expect more to come from his ministry.